In this lesson, we're going to be drying the feathers on our bird. We've had this thing froze up as we've been filming the other parts of the course. I took it out of the freezer, thawed it out, and re-washed it and went through all the washing steps like we did in the initial washing video. The first step in drying the feathers is water displacement. There are a number of ways you can displace water on turkey feathers. A lot of people use Coleman fuel to do this. I would not recommend that. It is too dangerous. There's many other ways you can do that. If you have a dedicated washing machine for your taxidermy shop, you can spin it out in there. That works really good. You can take it right out of the water, put it in the washing machine, spin it out, and then go right to the tumbler. If you don't have a dedicated washing machine, another great way to do it is to set it up like you see here with this basket and turn a fan on. And what that's going to do is it's going to blow air over it, help to dry some of that water off, and also some of the water will drip off being in the basket. You don't want to completely dry the feathers at this point. Just make it so it's not dripping wet. It should stay in front of a fan like this for maybe 10-15 minutes. You can change the position so other feathers are being hit by the fan. So about 10 minutes like this will be enough to get the water removed so we can hit the tumbler. Now that we have the majority of the water displaced, we have to prepare the bird to go into our tumbler. Before we do that, I want to make one thing very clear. If you're going to put a bird in a tumbler that has bone breaks like ours did, you want to start out by sewing up the wing with a few stitches. That's going to hold these broken bones inside of our wings so they're not flopping around in the tumbler and hitting our breast feathers and other feathers on the bird. Just going to put a few stitches in real quick. You don't have to completely sew the wing up for this step. Just 3 or 4 tie-offs. We'll be cutting this later when we do our wing work. A couple of over and under knots are fine for this. Do one more up here. If you have any other major holes in the bird, it's easier to sew them up at this time rather than doing it after the bird is dried. While you can certainly sew up holes after the bird has been dried, when the skin starts to dry out, that process gets much more difficult. So if you have a big gaping hole, now would be the time to invert your skin and sew that up. You can also put a form inside of your skin and sew it up from the other way if you want to make sure you have correct alignment. This is the tumbler we're going to be using. You can get this from Van Dyke's Taxidermy Supply. This is a 55-gallon tumbler. This is the correct size for turkeys. You wouldn't want to put a turkey in anything smaller than this. This is halfway filled up with corncob grit. I like to use the fine corncob grit for turkey work. If you don't have a tumbler like this, you can take corncob grit and pour it into a box and hand tumble it. It's going to take you quite a bit longer to do it that way, but it can be done. To load our turkey up, I like to lay it in with the head or the neck of the turkey this way. The feathers lined up, folded together. Then I just straighten it out in there. I'll let this thing tumble for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, depending on how dry my corncob grit is. If you're using new corncob grit, 15 minutes might be all you need. You do not want to completely dry the bird in the tumbler. You just want to get it about 75 to 80% dried, and we'll finish off the rest of the drying process with our bird blower or a shop vac or compressed air, depending on what you have. Also, when you get these tumblers in, they come with 3 baffles. I only like to use 2 baffles for turkey. I just put 2 in. You can even get by with just 1. I find that anything more than 2 beats up the bird a little bit too much. Also, if you would leave the bird in here too long, you can start to beat up the wing feathers a little bit more than you should. So 20 minutes is going to be about max for new corncob grit. Now we have our turkey pulled out of the tumbler. I want you to take a real close look at how the feathers look at this point. The ends of the feathers are almost dried, but the part closer to the skin or near the base of the quill is still somewhat wet. That's what you want to see right before we dry it the rest of the way. I shook off all the extra corncob grit. Anything that's still stuck on it will be blown away with our bird blower. You can see where we sewed our wing up, that's held together, and it protected the feathers during the tumbling process. There are a number of ways you can dry a turkey skin. I'm going to be using a Master Blaster bird blower. You can get this from Mackenzie. This is the larger model, the most powerful model. If you're going to buy one, I would recommend buying this one. It has 2 motors in it. You can turn them on together, and that's what I use when I dry my turkeys. The single model will also work. If you don't have this, you can use a shop vac on reverse. Not as good as this, but it does work. If you don't have that, you can use compressed air. Again, not as good as this or a shop vac because you don't have the warm heat that's created in this machine. When this thing is drying, it heats up a little bit and it's like a blow dryer, a supercharged blow dryer. If you don't have any of that, you can dry the skin with a blow dryer. You're going to be sitting there quite a long time. I would expect at least an hour with a blow dryer versus maybe 15 to 20 minutes with this. What I like to do when I'm drying the turkey is I put my left hand inside of the skin. One thing to keep in mind too when you're doing this, you don't want to dry out the skin too much. You can blow around a little bit in there to clean out some corncob grit, but you want to keep it fairly moist. I turn on my bird blower and I keep spinning the turkey as I'm drying it. I like to start with the breast feathers and then move around the bird. Get one area done, just kind of like fleshing. I start with one area, get that really good, and then move to the next. This will spray quite a bit of corncob grit around. You might want to do this step outside. We have the bird back from the bird blaster drying process. It took us about 20 minutes to get the feathers completely fluffed and dried. You can tell they're completely fluffed and dried when you lift them up and all the way down to the base of the quill. It's all fluffy. It's not matted looking or wet looking. You want to check over the entire bird for that to make sure it looks that way. The first thing I do when I get it back to my workbench is I clean the corncob grit out of the wings. I also straighten the wings back out. As you can see, they look a little disheveled from being in the tumbler yet. Some of the wing coverts also like to come through during the tumbling, so you push those back through. You can see all the corncob grit in the wings, in the primaries here especially. So I take my finger and I just zip it out. You can also do that a little bit to help shake them out. Also, what this does, it helps realign all of these feathers that are looking disheveled. Sometimes it helps too if you just do one feather at a time to help bring it back together. On the show side, or the side you see after the bird is mounted, it does not look this bad as it does underneath. It always looks worse underneath. Same with these secondaries. I'm just running my finger through and zipping those feathers back together and getting rid of any excess corncob grit. You can recall this is the side of the bird that had the damage. That's held together during the tumbling and drying process. We'll be cutting those stitches in a second. Some of this corncob grit will also fall out just during the mounting process. If you leave your bird in the tumbler too long, like we talked about, this can get worse. And sometimes it can't be fixed. So you want to pull it out at the moment we did. And you want it to look like what it looked like right after we pulled it out of the tumbler. Very important. Now we'll repeat that process on the other wing.